Imagine a world with no privacy, no space, a world in which billions and billions of people live and you have no space to yourself. Well, this is Billennium by JG Ballard. A summary to start off our revision video. The story is set in the distant future, by which time the world's population has stretched to such limits that space is severely short. Ward and Rossiter are close friends who discover a hidden room. They are triumphant, very happy. They feel like they've won with their extra space and plan to use it to maximum benefit. Later, Rossiter wants to invite their girlfriends to share their space. The girls then bring in their families too. Ward and his friend had despised, really hated, the greedy landlords who provided tiny cubicles to their tenants, but soon they both turned out to be like them. And an extended summary of this story. The story is set in the distant future, as the name Billennium suggests. So it's like millennium, but bi. Bi means two. So it's in the future. Nearly 20 million people are squashed into a city, putting tremendous pressure on space. The City Council has restricted the space that an individual can occupy to a mere 4 square meters, only 4 square meters, which is tiny. John Ward and Henry Rossiter are friends who share living space. They are both employed, but find it hard to survive in the crowded city where pedestrian traffic jams can last for days, with no one being able to move due to congestion. Notice this is pedestrian traffic jams and not the usual traffic jams of vehicles that we would expect. But it's people who are in the traffic jams, and these last for ages. Imagine how claustrophobic that would feel and how unpleasant. Very unpleasant, obviously. While hanging out in their cubicle, which is the name for a very small room, Ward discovers a long-forgotten room adjacent to their cubicle, adjacent or next to. They are triumphant in this new space, thrilled, as they have never known so much space before. Imagine how that must feel to be so excited about finding a room, finding some space. They buy a Victorian wardrobe for their new room. The Victorian wardrobe is it's a wardrobe made in the Victorian era, and it's a thing of beauty. And it's the only thing of beauty in their drab living area. So it's the one beautiful thing that they have. Soon, Rossiter has the idea of inviting their girlfriends to share the extra room with them, which actually at first seems like a very nice gesture. But the girls in turn ask their families to move in and take advantage of the space as well. Ward, who had hated the greedy landlords, who made so much money from him and everybody else in the city by giving them smaller and smaller spaces. He soon becomes a landlord himself of these girlfriends and their families. And making money takes precedence over enjoying their new room. So making money becomes more important for him than the enjoyment of their new room, which they were so excited about. In order to make more space, Ward and Rossiter break up the beautiful wardrobe, which is a crying shame. It's the one thing of beauty in their lives, and they destroy it. Analysis of this short story. It is a beautiful story construction. The story starts with the protagonists, Ward and Rossiter, describing their very claustrophobic life. In fact, the first 2 pages are really a description of how difficult and claustrophobic their life is, and how difficult it is to live in such a crowded city. And then Ballard gives them a reprieve. He makes his protagonists find a room. It's like he's given them a present almost, and the reader feels happy for the protagonists, and we're hopeful that their life is going to improve. But then Ballard comes in and crushes them again, because their girlfriends move in and their families, and they run out of space again. And then he makes them destroy the wardrobe, the only thing of beauty for them. Their misery for the first half of the story is compounded. It gets worse and worse as they talk about the population levels increasing and the square meters of their rooms becoming smaller, until they have a secret room all to themselves, and the reader breathes a sigh of relief for these gentlemen. We're really happy and hopeful. An average room, and this secret room is average for us, although it feels immense for them. It invokes a sense of wonder for the reader, because we're shocked at its comparative enormousness for these characters. We're shocked that a normal-sized room, typical of our bedrooms, can be so wonderful for these characters. And it gives us a sense of wonder, and it gives us a sense of what life is like for those characters. But then the generosity of Ward and Rossiter puts them into the same fix, the same problem that they started off with. Because they have become the greedy landlords that they hated so much. There is a note of optimism at the end of the story, but is it intended ironically? Probably. Then he pulled himself together. It was a beautiful wardrobe without doubt, but when it was gone, it would make the room seem even larger. So this is ironic because we would expect them to want to cherish what is beautiful in their lives, but actually they are attacking the one beautiful thing in their lives, and they are doing this to make even more room, to make the room seem even larger. Ballard may have seen this like frogs accustoming themselves to life in a slowly cooking pot. By this, I mean that frogs make themselves get used to something that's difficult in their life, and that difficulty is that they are being slowly cooked in a cooking pot. But they make the best of a bad situation, and that is exactly what Ward and Rossiter are doing in this case. Looking at this quote, they are making the best of a bad situation. So it's little wonder that Ballard was disliked by those who prefer the triumph of human spirit, because his characters did not triumph. We, the reader, thought they were going to when they found the large room, but Ballard brought them crashing back down to earth by including so many more people in the room, and by having them attack the only thing of beauty in their lives. The setting, obviously, is very important to this story. It is set in the future where the world is becoming increasingly overpopulated, with a world population of around 20 billion. And we can see that in this quote here. The official line was that world population had reached a plateau, leveling off at 20,000 million, which of course is 20 billion. It's interesting that the official line was that the world population was around 20 billion. But when we use those words, the official line, we expect that actually it's more. So though that is what the government is telling its people, but actually the government is underestimating the population level, and they are doing that to stop panic in their civilians. And it's reached a plateau. A plateau means when something levels off. Most of the world's inhabitants in this story live in crowded central cities in order to preserve as much land as possible outside of these cities for farming. So the countryside as such no longer existed. It is only cities where people live. Because the countryside is used predominantly for farming. Because if the countryside wasn't used for farming, they would have a severe food shortage. But as a result of the countryside being used for farming, the world does not have a food problem, nor do they have wars, since all governments devote themselves to only addressing the problems caused by, and down here it says, overpopulation. So the governments are only focused on the problems created by overpopulation. So they're not going to war with each other anymore. This is definitely an integral setting. And an integral setting means that the setting is fully described. And the setting is fundamental to the story. It is not a backdrop setting in which the setting is vague and it doesn't really matter where it happens. It could happen anywhere. It wouldn't change the story. The setting here in this story is integral. In the city inhabited by the two protagonists, which we never hear the name of, the city, John Ward and Henry Rossiter are the two protagonists. There is a mass shortage of space, and the people live in small cellular rooms, which are known as cubicles, where they are charged by ceiling space. The legal maximum decreasing to 3.5 square meters per person, which is tiny, and it's getting smaller. It was reduced from 4 square meters to 3.5. The city streets are enormously crowded, resulting in occasional pedestrian congestions that last days at a time. We can see that in this quote. 2 years earlier, Ward had been caught in a pedestrian jam outside the stadium for over 48 hours, was trapped in a gigantic pedestrian jam containing over 20,000 people. Just imagine that, being trapped in a group of 20,000 people for over 2 days, and you can't escape. You can't move left, you can't move right, you can't move forwards, you can't move backwards because there are so many people. It gives an incredibly claustrophobic feeling to the reader. Most old and historical buildings in this city have been taken down to make way for new battery homes. A battery home is a lot of cubicles, apartments, stacked on top of each other to save space. Or they're divided into hundreds of small cubicles. To be continued in the next video.